For nearly a century, the world has been captivated by a mystery that blended history, science, and human curiosity: the disappearance of pioneering aviator Amelia Earhart. Now, 88 years later, a stunning discovery deep in the Pacific Ocean may finally bring this age-old enigma to an end. Has the secret that puzzled generations at last been revealed? It began as a journey of ambition, courage, and the relentless pursuit of the unknown. In 1937, Amelia Earhart, already a household name and a symbol of daring, set out to circumnavigate the globe. Her aircraft, a sleek Lockheed Model 10 Electra, gleamed with promise and possibility. The world watched as she and her navigator, Fred Noonan, soared into the skies, their flight path tracing a line of hope across continents and oceans. But then, somewhere over the vast, unyielding Pacific, that line was broken. Radio signals faded into static. The world waited, breath held, for news that never came. Search parties scoured the ocean, ships and planes combed the waves, but the Electra had vanished. In the years that followed, the story of Amelia Earhart became more than a tale of loss. It became a legend, a riddle that refused to be solved. For decades, the mystery deepened. Theories multiplied. Some believed the plane had crashed and sunk, swallowed by the ocean's depths. Others imagined Earhart and Noonan stranded on a remote island, surviving against all odds. There were whispers of espionage, of secret missions, of government cover-ups. Each theory was fueled by the absence of evidence, by the tantalizing possibility that the truth was just out of reach. Historians, adventurers, and dreamers pored over every scrap of information: faded radio logs, fragments of debris, eyewitness accounts from distant atolls. Expeditions were launched, millions of dollars spent, but the Pacific kept its secret. The name Amelia Earhart became a symbol not just of aviation, but of the enduring power of mystery. And then, in 2025, everything changed. The discovery did not come with fanfare or breaking news alerts. It began quietly, with a team of oceanographers, engineers, and historians who had spent years developing new technology for deep-sea exploration. Their approach was different, meticulous, data-driven, and collaborative. They combined artificial intelligence with advanced sonar mapping, underwater drones, and a vast database of historical weather patterns, flight deviations, and ocean currents. Their search area was not the well-trodden paths of previous expeditions, but a region deeper and more remote than anyone had dared to explore. The Pacific, after all, is a place of unimaginable scale, a world beneath the waves where light fades and silence reigns. It was here, more than 16,000 feet below the surface, that their instruments detected an anomaly. At first, it was just a shadow, a shape half buried in silt and coral. But as the remotely operated vehicle drew closer, the outline became unmistakable. A twin-engine aircraft, remarkably intact, its design echoing the lines of the Electra. The world paused. Images were transmitted, analyzed, and compared to original Lockheed schematics. Aviation experts scrutinized every detail: the twin tail, the engine mounts, the rivet patterns. And then, the final confirmation: a partial serial number, barely visible beneath decades of marine growth, matching a component installed on Earhart's plane before her final flight. The reaction was electric. News spread across the globe, igniting a wave of astonishment, relief, and renewed fascination. For the first time in nearly a century, the story of Amelia Earhart had a new chapter, one grounded not in speculation, but in evidence. But the discovery raised as many questions as it answered. How had the plane ended up so far from its intended course? Why had so many previous searches failed to find it? The answers lay in the complexity of the Pacific itself, a place where currents shift, storms rage, and the ocean floor is a labyrinth of trenches and ridges. Early search efforts, limited by the technology of their time, had focused on shallower waters and more accessible locations. The tools needed to probe the deepest reaches of the ocean simply did not exist. It was only with the advent of AI-driven navigation, deep-sea LiDAR imaging, and machine learning-enhanced sonar that such a discovery became possible. The team's search algorithm, refined over years, cross-referenced tidal patterns, historical wind data, and drift models to create a probability map unlike any before. It pointed to a region overlooked by traditional models, a place where a minor navigational error, compounded by shifting winds and fuel exhaustion, could have led the Electra to its final resting place. The condition of the wreck told its own story. The wings were largely intact, the fuselage preserved in the cold, oxygen-poor depths. There were no signs of fire or catastrophic impact. Instead, the evidence suggested a controlled descent, a soft water ditching rather than a violent crash. The forward section of the plane, more preserved than expected, hinted at a low-impact entry into the water, a testament to Earhart's skill and composure in her final moments. But what of Earhart and Noonan? Did they survive the ditching? Did they attempt to radio for help, their signals lost in the static of wartime transmissions? Recent analysis of radio signals from July 1937 supports the idea that Earhart was transmitting after her scheduled check-in. Amateur radio operators across the Pacific reported faint, distress signals, references to fuel exhaustion, uncertain coordinates, and pleas for assistance. At the time, these were dismissed as wishful thinking or misinterpretation, but when overlaid on the newly confirmed crash site, the transmission paths made sense. Earhart had been calling from a location far south of where the Navy was searching. The implications of the discovery rippled outward. For over 8 decades, Amelia Earhart's story had lived in a space between legend and reality. She was more than a pilot. She was a symbol of boldness, independence, and resilience. Her disappearance became one of the most enduring mysteries in modern history, inspiring generations to dream, to question, to seek. Now, with the rediscovery of her plane, she reclaims her place not just as a mystery, but as a historic figure whose journey can be understood and honored with clarity. The wreck, now under international protection, is being studied with the utmost care. Teams from around the world are collaborating to preserve the site, conducting non-invasive surveys and 3D scans to document every detail. There is debate about whether the plane should be recovered and displayed in a museum or left in its underwater grave as a monument to her journey. Either way, the discovery has brought closure to a question that haunted aviation for nearly a century. The find has also sparked renewed interest in oceanic archaeology and historical aviation. Schools across the world are updating their curricula, documentaries and films are in production, and a new generation of young women is finding inspiration in Earhart's story, not just as a cautionary tale of loss, but as a narrative of ambition, courage, and eventual rediscovery. The recovery team is a testament to international cooperation. Specialists from multiple nations, united not by politics, but by a shared reverence for history, have deployed specially adapted underwater drones equipped with gentle manipulators and high-definition cameras. Every fragment of the aircraft is being carefully documented, 3D scanned, and analyzed. The hope is to reconstruct the exact sequence of events that led to the Electra's final descent. Early sonar scans suggest that some of the cargo from the plane's storage compartments may still be intact. There are indications of sealed containers, possibly holding navigation logs, maps, personal items, or even undeveloped film from the journey. If retrievable, These artifacts could offer an unprecedented glimpse into the mindset of Earhart and Noonan as they attempted one of the most daring flights in history. The thought of opening a waterlogged journal or developing film left inside the aircraft stirs deep emotions in those following the discovery. Forensic teams are also considering the possibility of human remains, though the likelihood is slim after so many years in the ocean's depths. Still, even the smallest organic fragment could help complete the biological story of the two flyers who vanished into the great blue unknown. A DNA match would finally, unquestionably, close the loop for their families, descendants who for decades held on to stories, photos, and fading hopes. Among those most deeply affected are the living relatives of Amelia Earhart. Her great-nieces and nephews have spoken publicly about the discovery, expressing a mixture of grief, closure, and pride. To them, she was more than a legend. She was a daughter, a sister, a fiercely independent woman who wanted to push boundaries not for glory, but to prove what was possible for everyone who came after her. This is not just the recovery of a plane, it is the return of a family legacy. The discovery is also a victory for citizen scientists. Over the years, countless amateur historians and researchers contributed their time, resources, and theories to the search. The breakthrough came not from a massive government operation, but from a team that incorporated open-source research, public archival material, and crowdsourced data analysis. It is a testament to what the global community can achieve when information is freely shared and curiosity is allowed to flourish. Of course, not everyone is convinced. As with any historic breakthrough, there are skeptics. Some argue that without bringing the plane to the surface, absolute certainty remains out of reach. Others question the timing, suggesting it is a publicity stunt or an attempt to draw attention to deep-sea exploration funding. But the mounting evidence from serial numbers and structural matches to flight path alignment and radio transmission correlations is difficult to dispute. Interestingly, the location of the wreck lends new weight to the long-dismissed Nikumaroro theory. For years, some researchers proposed that Earhart and Noonan landed on the coral atoll and survived for a time, based on scattered bones, local oral history, and relics like buttons and tools found in the area. The proximity of the wreck to that island revives those arguments. Could they have ditched near the reef and swum ashore? Could the plane have drifted to its final resting place while they perished waiting for rescue? These are now central questions in follow-up studies. There are even implications for the history of the Second World War. Some researchers wonder if classified military documents may have hinted at this location all along, buried in forgotten archives. The geopolitical landscape of the late 1930s meant that many regions were already under surveillance. Did someone know more than they let on? And if so, why was the truth hidden? Whatever the answer, the rediscovery of Amelia Earhart's aircraft is not just about solving a mystery. It is about reclaiming a chapter of human achievement. It is a reminder that our most persistent questions can eventually be answered given time, dedication, and the right tools. It is also a reflection on risk, the kind of risk that drove Earhart to defy the odds, to fly into the unknown, to attempt to circumnavigate the globe at a time when global aviation was still in its adolescence. One of the most powerful elements of this discovery is what it says about memory. For decades, Earhart's legacy was preserved by books, statues, documentaries, stamps, and museum exhibits. Her name appeared in classrooms, airports, and cultural references, often abstracted and mythologized. But now, the physical connection to her final flight has been restored. It is no longer just a story. It is a site, a structure, a series of coordinates. It is real. The wreck will also change how future generations understand the limits of technology and human ambition. At a time when we are setting our sights on Mars, building aircraft that can fly themselves, and expanding the edges of what is possible, the rediscovery of Earhart's Electra reminds us that the pursuit of knowledge is never wasted, even if it takes nearly a century to bear fruit. The expedition team has announced that over the coming months, they will release high-resolution imagery, sonar maps, and a documentary chronicling their journey. The footage already captured is haunting. Shadows of a silver bird sleeping silently at the bottom of the ocean, cradled by silt and coral, untouched for generations. It is poetic. It is tragic. It is beautiful. There is talk of a memorial, either on land in Washington, D.C., or at sea near the coordinates of the wreck. Pilots have already begun proposing a flyover tribute to honor Earhart and Noonan, with vintage and modern aircraft participating from around the world. The aviation community, long inspired by Earhart's fearlessness, sees this as a closing chapter that deserves nothing less than reverent celebration. And while the mystery is solved, the fascination remains. What truly happened during those final hours may never be fully known, but the evidence now brings us closer than ever before. Her voice, captured in the logs, her decisions, reflected in the wreck, and her spirit, unmistakably enduring through the decades, all come together in a finale both solemn and inspiring. Amelia Earhart once said, "Adventure is worthwhile in itself." In rediscovering her final adventure, we have also rediscovered the worth of perseverance, the power of history, and the unshakable human drive to understand the unknown. 88 years of silence have ended. Amelia Earhart's plane has been found, and in doing so, a door once closed by tragedy has finally been opened by truth.